coordinator, Brian Daboll. Brian, Steve, and Chris Brown here in Buffalo. How you doing, man? How's the offseason treating you? Are you making it through the pandemic okay?
Good, Steve. Yeah, we're doing good. I want to wish you and Chris a happy Father's Day. I hope you guys had a good day yesterday. And, it's been an interesting off season in terms of all the virtual meetings that we've had, but it's been as productive as we can make it. And looking forward to getting a few weeks off here and then get ready to get going here in training camp.
Yeah, Coach, I know on the conference call with the media a week or so ago, you were talking about the reality is we can't make excuses for the situation that we're in, but at the same time, the facts are you've probably missed out on about 8,000 to 9,000 reps, I believe you said, by your count. So looking at this in a positive fashion, Coach, what are the forces that you think will help you guys as a team make up for the lost time when you do get the players back on the field?
Well, I think we did a good job. I think it starts with Sean and setting up the different types of meetings that, we try to stay out in front of staying boring in our meetings and really doing a good job of keeping the guys engaged and meeting in small groups at times so that guys can, get a feel for one another. Time will tell, Chris. This will be a challenging training camp for everybody. But we feel we did a good job in the off season. And when training camp hits, there's no substitute for repetitions out on the field. So we'll get as many of those as we can, and we're looking forward to it.
We've said a lot that is continuity. We've got a lot of your key players back. Somebody did an article that said, 88% of your offensive snaps are back on the roster this year as compared to last year. So, you've got a lot of continuity, but there's no question you're still going to have to incorporate new pieces into the puzzle, and some of them are going to be pretty prominent pieces. How do you think that's going to go? Are you going to get a benefit with all the continuity, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think when you can have people that are familiar with the system and familiar with one another, that always helps a little bit. But in terms of where we'll be or where we'll end up, time will tell. Obviously there's some new pieces with Stephon and then a bunch of the rookies, and we signed a couple other linemen, Bain and Williams in the off season. So you got to go through practice reps and see what's working. Things you might think are going to be really good for one particular player. You get them here and you say, boy, you know what? I think we need to switch this. But you better do it early in camp. There's not a lot of time for trial and error with where we're at.
I know the coaches are back in the building. So are you spending your time? How much of your time, Coach, are you guys spending as a staff kind of rewriting how training camp's going to have to go install-wise and everything like that? I mean, I know Coach McDermott mentioned, timing in the passing game, something they want to focus on because that's a hard thing to grasp when you don't have the repetitions. So how have you guys worked to shift things in terms of prioritizing things, and how much different might it look when you get back to camp from what it normally is come late July?
I don't think it's going to look, too much different. At this time of year, when things start winding down and you get a few weeks here to kind of get a little break before the season starts, you're going to have to. What you're really going to have to do, Chris, I think that was you who asked the question, is you're going to have to be able to adjust, I'd say, rather quickly. A lot of times in spring you can kind of play with things and see what you like, and albeit you're going against your own defense with no pads on, but there's still timing of routes and route technique and types of throws and runs and things like that you always want to adjust. Maybe it doesn't look as good as you thought it might look. Our system is very flexible, and we're going to try to do whatever we can do that fits our guys. Obviously, we know a lot of them, and there's some guys that we don't know. It'll look, I'd say, fairly similar. It'll be a different venue and things like that. But what we're going to have to do a good job as coaches is really, after practice, get onto the tape, not just evaluate the players, because in training camp, usually you're looking at two things. You're refining your system, you're seeing what's good, you're seeing how the pieces fit, but you're also doing a lot of evaluating whether that be at the top part or the bottom part of the roster. And we're going to have to do a good job of managing those reps and those periods accordingly.
You're on One Bills Live, and we're on the line with Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. What was your involvement? Josh gave us some insights that you were kind of there virtually when they had that workouts session going down in Florida. What was your impression of that, how Josh handled it, how Davis Webb handled it, Matt Barkley? Were the guys in that quarterback room, how'd they handle it, and how do you think is there going to be some progress made this offseason, or are you just kind of trying to maintain? What's your take on, how productive this offseason might be?
Sure. I think we made it as productive as we can make it. I think those guys did a really good job talking to them after they got back. Josh and Davis and Bark, and those guys did a good job of setting the thing up. And there were a lot of people that went there. They got some throwing sessions in, which was good for them. I think they, built a little bit of camaraderie off the field. But credit to those guys for, taking the reins on that. I know there's a lot of teams doing it. I'm glad that Josh and the quarterbacks decided to do that. And different things we've done, Steve. There's so many of these Zoom meetings we've had basically for the last couple months that, we've met individually as position groups. We've had speakers. We've met, in small groups, whether it be, the line and the running backs and the line and the receivers, the quarterback, however that may be. And then we've also set up, kind of little mini rooms, if you will, with, trying to simulate a practice the best we could, where, there's 4 coaches kind of assigned to a group with each 4 of the quarterbacks, and then there was, certain tight ends in each room and certain receivers and certain running backs. And then, we got kind of the way that we did it in our group is I'm on the phone and I'm muted myself on the Zoom, and Josh is with me on the phone, and then there's another coach with me, and he's doing some certain signals, and I'm talking to Josh, and Josh is talking to the group, and they're drawing it on, a little whiteboard. We try to get as creative as we could with it and, as productive as we could with it. So, again, I'm pleased with the offseason and what the coaches and the players did to try to make it as productive as we could. How that translates, I think everybody's going to find out. The one thing that's for certain is we need to get as many reps as we can possibly get at full speed, and so we can get the timing down and see it the best we can. And that's going to be very important for us on the offensive side of the football.
Coach, as hard as you try to replicate real practice via a whole bunch of different devices, I mean, Josh was telling us how he had you in his ear on his phone. Yeah. And how he was drawing stuff up on the iPad and then calling it out on Zoom to his teammates to try to replicate what you guys do on the field. I want to know just how creative did you get to kind of make this fun, too, because I think we all know attention spans when people are on screens can kind of wane sometimes. So, I mean, did you have to get so creative that you sometimes felt like you were doubling as a game show host here to quiz guys on playbook stuff? Like, how far did you push it? I mean, were you Monty Hall, or how did it go?
No, I think that, the position coaches met with them a lot, and each of them have their own twist on how to keep the guys engaged, which they all did a fantastic job. But, there's, I've seen about every game show you could see just jumping into individual meetings based on, how Rob Boris did it, to how Bobby Johnson did it, to how Doris did it, to how Skip did it, to how Chad did it. There's a lot of cool little games that they play. And the guys, what's interesting is, most of us, I'd say all of us in this business are highly, highly competitive. And, even though you're on a computer, you can see that come out, and there's arguments. And, we kept it light, but we took care of business.
You've added Steph Diggs to the wide receiver room, and everybody's always said, whether it's true or not, Josh needed this big-time number 1 receiver, but it does put a wide receiver in that's near the top, if not the top guy on your depth chart at wide receiver. How does that change your mindset going into the season? Obviously, you've got a lot to learn about Steph Diggs, but what could that do if it was a perfect world and a perfect offseason? How do you anticipate that changing your offense?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that Brandon and our organization acquired him. He's I've got to know him here in the last few months, and I'm just a big fan of him as a person and as a teammate. He's fit in well with the receiver room, and anytime you can add good players, that'll help. I think Smoke is a pretty good receiver too. He had a really good year last year for us, and Beasley, and the more that those three and whoever else sorts himself out can get involved with those guys, and chemistry is important in that room too. To give more options to Josh, that should help us. How much, we'll see, but this guy was a very, very hard worker in the off season, trying to pick up the material the best way he could without going out there and do it. And then his work on the practice field, just from talking to people that have been around him, he is a 100%, 100-mile-an-hour guy all day at practice. So you can see how and why he's been productive in these first few seasons for him. But we're happy to have him, and we're happy to integrate him into the room and get him out there with those guys.
One guy, Coach, that we didn't get an opportunity to ask you about on the conference call last week was Dawson Knox. Josh
Sure.
was speaking very highly of him, was talking about how he's kind of transformed himself physically, added some lean muscle mass. What do you think, especially taking this unusual offseason into consideration, what do you think is realistic progress for Dawson as he enters year 2 here?
Well, I think being in the system for a year is going to help him. You got to remember where he came from, and as a walk-on quarterback, and he
right.
get a lot of balls that Ole Miss, and then he comes up here and misses training camp some, and then comes in. And Dawson is a talented young player, and you hope to see, and you usually do, you hope to see a considerable or some type of improvement from year 1 to year 2. And we're happy to have him. He fits well into our tight end room. He's a athletic big man that can bend and jump and run and catch and block, and hopefully he's going to be ready to go. And I think he's a good player. He's a good person. We're happy to have him on our team. I'm hoping that he takes a good jump this year.
What about the 2 rookie wide receivers that were also added during the draft, Gabriel Davis,
Sure.
Isaiah Hodgins? What do you see about them, and what do you like about them, coming into training camp?
Yeah, well, again, credit to the scouts, the scouting staff, and Dan and Joe and Brandon and everyone else that's involved in that. That was a little bit of a different thing for us too this year. These 2 guys are very mature, and they fit our Bills' DNA with what we look for in terms of tough, smart, dependable. They're smart. And again, just preface this by saying it's hard to get a true evaluation to see how they take it from the classroom to the field, and they're able to operate it in a quick manner. But on these Zoom calls, they're well prepared. They are smart young men. They've picked up the things that we've installed with them. Big body guys have the ability to make some contested catches. Size guys, but also for bigger guys can drop their weight and run routes. Now it'll be interesting to see, when they get out here with pads and we're getting press coverage all the time, how that translates. Usually a learning curve here from college to the pros, but encouraged by what they've done this offseason, and can't wait to get out there and work with them. I'm a big fan of both those young men.
And then with those young guys, Coach, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm looking for you to expand a bit on this. You didn't have the on-field evaluation time with no OTAs and such. And granted, it's not necessarily real football, as you just mentioned, because the pads aren't on yet. But absent that evaluation time, how do you jam that into training camp to really get the evaluation that you want to be sure about people, whether they're new to the roster or a young player who's on the come, but maybe he's not there yet by week 1?
Yeah.
How do you weave that into what you're normally doing for a training camp?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. It's something we're going to have to stay on top of. I don't think there's any secret way to do it. We're going to have to get as many reps as we can possibly get, with the help of our strength and conditioning staff and our sports science and analytics. You have to do what's best for the players in training camp and make sure you're taking care of them. But it's going to be a challenge this summer, trying to get as good of evaluation of these young guys as you can, because like you said, you're missing out on a bunch of reps that you had in OTAs. But again, that goes back to the scheduling process, and Sean's on top of that with how we're going to do things. And again, there's no substitute for repetition. So as many as live reps as we can get, we're going to need, because there's a lot of guys to look at, but you're also trying to get your guys ready for the opening game, which is a little bit different this year than in years past based on some of the things we've missed.
It was Steve Tasker and Chris Brown on One Bills Live. We're talking to Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. This may be the toughest, Coach, this may be the toughest offseason of all time for a rookie to come in and try and make a football team. And that, plus the fact that your roster, even without the guys you drafted, is really strong and deep. It's going to be hard for most of these young guys, given the abbreviated offseason, the changed offseason, the weird offseason, however you want to call it, not only to come in and prove that they can play, but also to play well enough to earn a spot on this roster, because this is not the roster you had 3 years ago.
Right. I talked to some of these guys last week, particularly the rookies, just a little bit about that, Steve. As a former player and how you came about. It's easy as a young guy to count reps, if you will, and it's easy to kind of read things and look outside of really what they need to be looking at. Then they start pressing. That's natural. It's been that way for a long time since I've been in the league, and they're going to have to really do a good job of staying in the moment and dominating the things that they can control, whether that's 6 reps or 10 reps or however many reps they get. And that's just not in a team setting. I told them it's going to have to be their mindset and individual work when you're out there in stretching. Like everything that you do, you just take it 1 rep at a time, whatever that drill is, because it's easy for those young guys to start looking ahead, and anxiety creeps in, and then your head's not in exactly the right spot for a young player, and for them not to be here and then just get this short amount of window. I really think that we as coaches and support staff and have to do a great job of assisting those guys and really helping them just stay on task with what they need to do and not get too far ahead of themselves.
Coach, just in terms of to-do list things, I'm sure you've got a longer list than we even know about, but with some of the additions that you've made, I look at your red zone touchdown efficiency from last year, which I think was around almost 57%. I think it was middle of the pack in the league. Now with Diggs and what he can do, and knowing his scoring proficiency alone, 23 touchdowns the last 3 seasons, which is like tied for 5th in the league over that span, and the way in which Zach Moss can run the football and get yards after contact, when you need tough yards in the red zone. I'm not trying to put too much on a rookie's shoulders, but just adding players of that caliber, how much do you feel it will help in the point production in the red area?
Yeah, that's something that we work on, Chris, early on in camp, usually within the first day or two. I think it'll be probably the first day this year when we're out there. The red zone obviously is an important part of the field. Anytime you can have players that can help you down there, whether they can create short space quickness or size throws or ability to get downhill and break some tackles, that always helps. The field is condensed. You're seeing different types of defenses, and the more skilled players that you can have to create mismatches and beat some match coverage. And when one guy gets doubled, another guy has to win. Those are all important things. So we're going to have to do a good job at the early part of training camp and the installation schedule of getting some core things in, and also, like you just mentioned, evaluate some of these new guys and what they really do well down there. You can watch Minnesota or Utah or Central Florida or Oregon State or really any of the new guys that we had. You got to make sure that in terms of your system and what you do, that meshes. And if it doesn't mesh and you see something else out there early in camp, you got to be ready to adjust and switch it to what they really do well. We got a good feel from studying them on tape of their strengths and some of their weaknesses, and we're going to try to use that accordingly.
Coach, 2 years ago, your offensive line struggled to win at the point of attack. Last year, they were much, much better and drove the team to a 10-win season, or helped drive them to a 10-win season. And then this year, you've also brought in more depth and more competition for training camp. What are your expectations for the guys up front? We spend a lot of time here on this show talking about Josh and Steph Diggs and the wide receivers, just like we've done today. But the offensive line may be the engine that runs the offense and helps Josh to be as successful as he can be. What's your hopes for this offensive line this year, and what will changes? What might we see?
Yeah, there's no question about that. That's where it all starts, and everyone on our offense knows that. Those 5 guys and whoever else sorts itself out. We added D. Will from Carolina and Bame, and we got Spencer back and Ike, and we have some depth there. We'll see how that sorts itself out. But credit Bobby Johnson and Hef and Wendy with the guys that we got in. Most of them were all new, besides Dion. And Dion's done a fantastic job this offseason. He's just, he's a lot. I don't want to say he's grown up, but he's really grown up the last couple of years I've been around him. Got a tremendous amount of respect. He's been a good leader in that room for us. And we brought back Q and Mitch and Felice and Cody and Ty. Like, those guys they're a close-knit group, and to play that position, you usually got to see it through the same set of eyes. All 5 guys got to be on the same page. Where receiver makes a mistake, like sometimes it's not acceptable, but it's not as bad as when one lineman makes a mistake and then it causes the other 4 to not be able to do their job. So that's where it all starts for us, whether it's the run game or the pass game. Have a lot of confidence in those guys. They have another year together. They're all smart. They're all tough. Having some new pieces for competition, and we'll see how it unfolds. But there's no question about it, Steve. Those guys, not to get lost in the shuffle. I know the receivers and the backs and the tight ends and the quarterbacks are fun to talk about all the time, but these are the guys that drive the engine for us.
All right, Coach, I know you got a little downtime here coming up, so I do have to ask you before we let you go. I know you have a particular affinity for mixing Welch's grape juice with Sprite, but is there a particular summer drink that you partake in more than that even?
No, I'm pretty simple guy. I drink sparkling water. That's about what I drink, and about it.
That's all you got by the pool? That's it?
Yeah, that's what I got. Right now I got this big jug of water. I'm trying to shed a few pounds. Lord knows I need to do that. So, it's a beautiful time here in the summer in Western New York. The players go all over and the coaches take their vacations, but there's just about the best place you can be year round. But in particular in the summertime, there's nothing like Western New York. And the weather, it's just it's a great place to be.
Well, Brian, thanks for spending some time with us today. Appreciate you taking the time. Good luck with the rest of the offseason. We'll look forward to seeing you on opening day for sure.
Yeah, great, guys. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day and enjoy your summer and enjoy your families, and look forward to seeing you guys soon.